My wife left me for a younger man. Our son's wedding day revealed her biggest regret. I, 32M, never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after what happened at my son's wedding last weekend, I need to get this off my chest. It's a long one, but I think it's worth telling. 15 years ago, my wife left me for her personal trainer. I was working long hours at my engineering firm, trying to secure our future, while she spent her afternoons at the gym. I didn't see it coming, or maybe I did but chose to ignore the signs. The late-night texts, the sudden interest in fitness, the new wardrobe, the way she'd get defensive when I asked about her day, the mysterious weekend errands that seemed to take longer and longer. Classic signs, right? We met in college. She was studying psychology, and I was neck-deep in engineering. Back then, we had big dreams. She wanted to open her own practice, and I wanted to start my own firm. Somewhere along the way, her dreams got put on hold while mine took off. I'm not proud of that now. The problem started small. She'd make comments about feeling stuck, about missing her old ambitions. I'd promise we'd revisit her career goals once my company was more stable. Just another year, I'd say. But 1 year turned into 5, and before I knew it, she was a stay-at-home mom who seemed to be drowning in suburban monotony. I remember the day things changed. I came home early, hoping to surprise her. One of those rare occasions when a meeting got canceled. The house was empty, but her laptop was open. I wasn't snooping, I swear, but a Facebook message popped up. Her trainer asking if she was still coming by later. The conversation history was right there. Months of flirting, of emotional intimacy, of planning meetups disguised as training sessions. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I watched. Noticed how she'd light up when her phone buzzed. How she'd spend extra time getting ready for the gym. How she'd come home with that post-workout glow that had nothing to do with exercise. She moved out on our son's 13th birthday. Didn't even stay for the cake. Just packed her bags and said she needed to find herself. Our son found her all right, with her trainer at the mall 2 weeks later. He stopped speaking to her for months after that. The look on his face when he came home that day, I'll never forget it. He tried to act tough, but I heard him crying in his room that night. The divorce was brutal. She wanted half of everything, including my company shares. Her lawyer, a shark in an expensive suit, painted me as an absent workaholic who drove her into another man's arms. My lawyer painted her as an irresponsible mother who abandoned her family. Both were wrong, and both were right in their own ways. The truth, as always, was messier than either side wanted to admit. I got primary custody of our son, largely because he refused to live with her. She got her freedom and her younger man, plus a hefty settlement that nearly crippled my business. I had to sell my dream house, the one I'd spent years saving for, just to keep the company afloat. Those first few months were hell. I'd come home to an empty house that still smelled like her perfume. Our son would sit at the dinner table, pushing food around his plate, asking questions I couldn't answer. Why wasn't I enough for her to stay? Did she ever really love us? How do you explain to a teenager that sometimes love isn't enough? That people can love you and still leave? I threw myself into being both mom and dad. Learned to cook, helped with homework, attended every school event. I learned to braid hair for his girlfriend when she came over for prom. Learned to listen instead of trying to fix everything. Those years were tough, but they made my relationship with my son stronger than ever. My ex-wife's new life wasn't as perfect as she'd imagined. The trainer, turns out he had a wandering eye. She'd call late at night sometimes, after a few glasses of wine, talking about mistakes and regrets. I'd listen, not out of kindness, but because I needed to hear her pain to heal my own. Our son graduated high school with honors. She showed up late to the ceremony, sat in the back. At the after-party, she tried to take credit for his success. He got his brains from me, she'd say to anyone who'd listen. Our son just rolled his eyes and stuck closer to me. I started dating again when our son went to college. Met my current wife at a work conference. She was presenting on sustainable architecture. We took it slow, both carrying baggage from past relationships. She taught me how to trust again, how to open up without fear of abandonment. She never tried to replace our son's mother, instead building her own relationship with him based on mutual respect and understanding. Fast forward to last weekend. Our son, now 28, was getting married to his college sweetheart. The venue was beautiful, a restored barn overlooking the ocean. My ex-wife showed up alone, wearing a dress that was trying too hard to look young. I noticed she kept checking her phone, as if waiting for someone who wasn't coming. During the ceremony, I watched her watching me with my new wife, saw how we held hands and exchanged knowing glances. She was drinking more than usual, her laugh getting louder as the evening wore on. Then came the speeches. Our son stood up and thanked me for being there through everything. He talked about how I taught him what real strength looks like, how sometimes the person who stays is stronger than the person who leaves, about learning to cook together, about late-night talks about girls and college and life, about how I showed him that it's okay for men to cry, to be vulnerable, to ask for help. I saw my ex-wife flinch at those words, her mascara starting to run. He thanked his stepmom too, for showing him what healthy love looks like, for being there without trying to replace anyone. The way my ex-wife's hands tightened around her wine glass told me everything about how those words hit her. Later, she caught me alone at the bar. She'd aged well, but there was something tired in her eyes, something broken. He left me, she said quietly, staring into her martini. 3 years ago. For someone younger. She laughed, but it was hollow. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? The trainer. He's engaged to his new client. She's 26. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. Instead, I felt an odd mix of pity and gratitude. Pity for the choices she'd made, and gratitude for where those choices had led me. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. That must have been hard. She shook her head, tears threatening to spill. I made my bed. Then she looked at me directly for the first time in years. You did good with him. Better than I ever could have. I see him with his bride, and I see how he looks at her. Like you used to look at me. Before I ruined everything. She told me about her life now. The empty apartment, the dates that go nowhere, the way our son's old room at her place still has his teenage posters up because she can't bear to change it. How she follows his life through social media because he only calls on holidays. How watching him dance with his bride reminded her of our wedding day, when everything still seemed possible. Before I could respond, our son appeared. Mom, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Your Uber's here. He'd been watching her drink, making sure she got home safely. Even now, he was being the responsible one. As she left, I watched her pause at the door, looking back at the happy celebration she was leaving early. In that moment, I saw what she'd really lost. Not just a husband, but a family, trust, respect. The biggest regret wasn't leaving me. It was missing out on the beautiful man our son had become. My wife found me still at the bar. You okay? She asked, squeezing my hand. She always knows when I'm lost in old memories. I looked at our son dancing with his new bride, both of them beaming with joy. His wife whispered something in his ear, making him laugh, that deep, genuine laugh that sounds just like his mother's used to. Never better, I replied, and for the first time in 15 years, that wasn't a lie. That night, after the reception, my wife and I sat on our hotel balcony, watching the waves crash against the shore. We talked about the wedding, about family, about healing. She asked if seeing my ex-wife brought up old feelings. Only gratitude, I told her. If she hadn't left, I wouldn't have you. Our son wouldn't be the man he is. Sometimes the worst things in our lives lead us to the best things. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. Sometimes you have to lose everything to appreciate what you had. And sometimes, the things you think will break you end up making you stronger. My ex-wife learned that lesson the hard way. As for me, I learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. Our son's wedding day wasn't just a celebration of his new beginning. It was a reminder that endings aren't always endings. Sometimes they're just the start of a better story. And as I watched my son and his new wife drive away, rice still in their hair and love in their eyes, I silently thanked my ex-wife. Not for leaving, but for teaching all of us what real love isn't, so we could recognize it when it finally came along. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.